Hello, sixth graders. So today we're going to start our new topic, which is topic 9. And topic 9 is all about this thing called a ratio. Okay, so a ratio is a comparison of two or more quantities. Okay, so you hear a lot of things about ratios in everyday life. Okay, you compare something to something else. Okay. Now, these things don't really have to be similar at all. It can be the amount of boys to girls. It can be the amount of coffee cups to cakes. Whatever you want, just comparing two or more things. Okay, so let's look at this example right now. There are 3 different ways you can write a ratio. Okay, so let's look. The ratio, it says that's the ratio of squares to triangles. So I count 3 squares, and I count 5 triangles. So the first way to write a ratio, we can see that comparing squares to triangles is 3 squares to 5 triangles. So the first way to write a ratio is literally writing that. 3 to 5. It's as easy as that. That's one way to write a ratio. Squares to triangles is 3 to 5. The next way to write a ratio is to use a colon. 3 to 5. And you would still call that 3 to 5, but it's just another way to represent it. All right? And the third way, okay, is as a fraction. 3 to 5. Okay? So it can be used with the word 2, with a colon, and as a fraction. Okay? But the way that a question is worded changes how you write the ratio. Let's look at this final example. So, what is the number of triangles to squares? So, in this case, we compare triangles first and then squares. So, instead of 3 to 5, it would be triangles, which is 5 to 3. And the order of a ratio is very, very important. Whatever comes first in the statement comes first in your ratio. So triangles are first here, so the amount of triangles comes first. Okay? 5 to 3, so this could also be written like this. And as a fraction, like this. 5 over 3, or 5 to 3. So those are the 3 different ways we can write a ratio. And again, it's just a comparison of 2 or more quantities. Now, we're also going to talk about how to find an equivalent ratio. And it's really helpful to find an equivalent ratio if you look at a ratio like this, as a fraction. Okay? Because to find an equivalent ratio, you find it the same way you find an equivalent fraction. Either multiply or divide the numerator and denominator by the same number, just like you would make an equivalent fraction. So for example, 3 to 5 is our ratio, 3 to 5. I can make an equivalent ratio by multiplying the numerator and denominator by any number as long as it's the same. So I can multiply by 2. And an equivalent ratio to 3 to 5 would be 6 to 10. That's an equivalent ratio. Okay? I could come up with a different one. I don't have to multiply top and bottom by 2. Let's say I multiplied by 10. Well, 30 to 50 would also be an equivalent ratio. All right? So there are a bunch of different ways you can write equivalent ratios. I like to kind of do it in fraction form, just because it's easy to see an equivalent fraction, and it's basically the same thing as an equivalent ratio. So let's look at some examples. All right, so we have some examples on this page. And we have the 3 ways to write a ratio. X to Y, so something to something, X with the dots or colons, Y, and then as a fraction. And we're also going to come up with an equivalent ratio as well. So remember, the order that the statement is matters. Apples to pears. Apples would come first, pears would come second. So how many apples do you see in this picture? I see 1, 2, 3. So apples will be 3 to pears. I see 1, 2. So the ratio of apples to pears would be 3 to 2. We can write it like this, or we can write it like this. Now, to make an equivalent ratio, you can multiply top and bottom by anything, as long as it's the same number. I always stick with the lowest one, so that would be 2. So an equivalent ratio would be 6/4, or 6 to 4, okay? Let's look at the next one, ice cream to donuts. Okay, so the amount of ice cream would always come first. So how many ice cream cones do you see? I see 1, 2, and that's all I see. So it's 2. And then to donuts, I see 1 donut, 2 donuts, 3 donuts. So it would be 2, 2, 3. Ice cream comes first, donuts come second. All right, so we can write it 2:3 and 2/3, or 2 to 3 is our fraction. And again, what could an equivalent fraction be for 2 to 3? If you want to multiply by 2 or 3 or 4, whatever you decide, I just did times 2 top and bottom. You would get 4/6 as an equivalent fraction, or equivalent ratio, 4 to 6. Let's look at strawberries to cake. So again, strawberries comes first. I see 1 strawberry, 2 strawberries. Okay, so 2. Now cake, I see 1, 2 as well. Okay, so strawberries to cake would be 2 to 2. So an equivalent, again, another way to write it, and you can choose, let's say I chose 6 for this one. I could do 12 to 12 as my equivalent ratio. Okay, let's look at donuts to cupcakes. Donuts, we have 1, 2, 3. We found that earlier. 3 to cupcakes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cupcakes. So 3 to 5. We can write it like this, and we can write it like this. And then you can multiply top and bottom by anything you'd like. Let's do 3. Why not? You can get 9/15, or 9 to 15 as our equivalent ratio. We're getting towards the end. Let's look at apples to donuts. 1, 2, 3. 3 apples. And donuts I already found was 3 as well. So 3 to 3. 3 to 3. 3 to 3. I can multiply by 2, by 3, by 4, whatever you choose to get 6 to 6. Okay, and lastly, let's do cakes to cupcakes. So if I count the cakes, 1, 2. To cupcakes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 to 5, 2 to 5, 2 to 5. Let's do times 10. Why not? Doesn't really matter. 20 to 50. Okay, so what we just talked about today are just a couple ways to write ratios and how to find equivalent ratios. Again, if you think about ratios like fractions, it's really easy to find equivalent ratios, just like you would find equivalent fractions. All right? So you are going to have a Google form that's going to be in your classroom. Please complete that Google form. It's going to be just a little review on ratios and practicing writing different ratios and finding equivalent ratios. All right, if you have any questions, please email me, and have a wonderful day. Bye, 6th grade.